I suppose there, firstly, the weather itself is to be welcomed. It's fantastic around at the coast these days to see the sunshine eventually after such a long winter. But obviously, it brings to focus in that question of the start dates for the lifeguards, and while we welcome visitors and want them to enjoy the coastal locations that we have, they obviously have to be safe, and you would like to have lifeguards ideally available from the minute the sun shines. But unfortunately, I know that the lifeguard panel and pool, I suppose, tends to be drawn from students, whether they be leaving cert or college students, and subject to exams finishing up and that kind of stuff, it can be later than we'd like to see lifeguards getting started. We understand that we are beginning from the middle of May, from about the weekend of the 16th of May onwards. Over the course of a few weekends, it'll build up from starting in Lahinch and Spanish Point, expanding out county-wide by June weekend. But yeah, we would not be fair if they were in situ from May weekend onwards, because depending on, obviously it's weather dependent, but when the fine weather does shine, people have a natural tendency to flock to the sea, and there's inherent risk there for people that are maybe not familiar with particular beaches or tidal and currents and so on. So obviously in the absence of lifeguards, you have to try and urge people to to be cautious and to respect the sea and look out of it. I suppose it might look fine, look out on a flat on a cannon beach, but it mightn't be the case under the currents.
I suppose you mentioned there the wait for students in particular to be finished, whether it be college or even if you're looking at secondary school, possibly if you're looking at some 17 or 18-year-olds. But I suppose there's some that might be finished a bit earlier than others, and they'd be flocking to the beach to enjoy the fine weather. So does it make the case for a contingency plan to be there for spells or even heat waves, such as we're kind of a mini heat wave we're experiencing right now?
Yeah, look, ideally, if you had that, a readiness to react, I suppose it would be ideal. I suppose again, the risk with that is that you give the public the indication that you have that panel, but then circumstances change as well, and when you are relying on part-time people to react and come into cover, it mightn't always be possible. So it's a frustrating time of the year every year, especially if the sun happens to shine as it has this week. Can we? I think, in fairness, over the last 4 or 5 years, we've gradually improved. I suppose that we're trying to build out. It has built out weekend or a couple of weeks extra onto the season, and you'll have the 7-day cover commencing from June weekend onwards at kind of 4 primary beaches around the west coast. But it's a balancing act, I suppose, and it's grand to say we'd love to see the lifeguards on the go from this weekend onwards. So I just do understand the challenges and getting those people on the ground and getting them out working. But I know that some of the new ones coming on board for the season have had their induction training there in the last week or two. So they will be ready to go from mid to late May onwards. But for now, I suppose over these weekends, it's for the public to proceed with caution.
And I suppose that is the positive thing. When you're looking back at the last couple of years, it really was late June before things got kicked up fully, and it was only the kind of second or third week of June before they were seen part-time, and that's gradually moved in towards the end of May. So it is gradually creeping back towards an earlier start date.
It has. That's the positive interest piece that we just to acknowledge, I suppose, that this has been raised numerous times over the last 5 or 6 years of life in the council, and multiple councillors have spoken on it, and in fairness, the management have reacted and acted so far as they have, I suppose, so far, but we'd like to see it go further. But I suppose you have to be cognizant and realistic around the availability of the lifeguards, I suppose, when the panel of people that you're trying to pick from at, as we say, kind of what is exam season.